This is an old photo of Old Tom, one of the only orca whales that helped the Davidson Company hunt for baleen whales, something that has never been seen in the history of mankind. A killer whale that helped humans hunt? Wait, what? He wasn't the biggest orca, he wasn't the strongest orca. Heck, he wasn't even the fastest orca whale in the world. But Old Tom had one thing that none of the other whales had: a big heart. He had formed a special bond with the Davidson family, and for 90 years, the whale would go out with the members of the family and their workers and go hunting together. A human-orca combo. It all started in the small forest town of Eden, located in New South Wales on the southeastern coast of Australia. From the 1840s until the 1930s, Old Tom helped the Davidson family run their business. It was the ultimate man-animal bond, but this family had a secret. You see, the town of Eden was the epicenter of the whaling history of Australia since the 19th century, but the history of the whalers didn't start there. It started about 10,000 years ago, when the first indigenous whalers formed close bonds with the Orcas, which they then called Bewas, meaning brothers in English. The name of the tribe of indigenous Australian whalers was Katunga. Since the tribe had been formed, they saw the killer orca whales as the reincarnations of their ancestors. They could notice just how intelligent and cunning they were when it came to hunting, so these saltwater people thought that orcas were just like their elders. In addition to this, their black and white clothing only further made the tribesmen believe in this theory. And of course, there was a strange tendency for a new orca whale to appear in the waters every time one of the Katunga people would pass away. For the waders, these killer whales were considered working dogs, which were playful, helpful, and friendly, and they had a special deal signed with the whales. No, they didn't really sit down at some table and jotted down an agreement with the chieftain of the Katunga and the matriarch Orca signed with its fin. It was more of a law. It was called the Law of Tongue, and it's what allowed these waders to become highly skilled at catching other whales. Since the start of the tribe's existence, they have been helped by the orca population nearby. But what is this Law of Tongue? Well, to put it simply, it's a deal the whalers had with the Orcas. The Orcas would herd other species of whale, the Katunga whalers would harpoon and drag them out to the shore, and then for the next 24 hours, they would leave the hunted whales in the shallow water on the shore. This, in turn, allowed the Orcas to calmly and with scalpel-like precision carve out the tongue, the lips, and the genitals of the whale. The bones and the blubber were left unharmed, which is exactly what the whalers needed. We should tell you that this little trick is what made the Orcas prefer the Katunga whalers over other whalers in the region. But how can an orca help a person hunt? Does it have some special techniques? Well, for starters, if you look at some of the current seal hunting strategies of an orca pod, you'll realize just how smart they are. One of the strategies these apex predators have developed for hunting seals is simple. One orca scouts the ice above the water, then it dives down to inform where a seal is located. The whales will then use their powerful tails to create small tidal waves that will be more than sufficient to knock a seal off the ice and into the water. Once inside the water, the animal will be ripped to shreds in a matter of seconds, leaving it no room to escape. Something similar happens when an orca is smashing that like button, just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, in all seriousness, the interesting strategy has to do with orcas hunting for baleen whales. As we mentioned earlier, orcas have a distinct coloring of their skin, and don't think for a second that this is accidental. You see, the belly of an orca is white is because when some prey like a whale looks at it from below, it'll have trouble distinguishing it from the surface of the sun when the sun is shining. Or if that same whale is looking at the orca from above, then that animal will barely see the orca because its back is fully black. Fun fact, great white sharks use the same camouflage technique. Orcas know that they're almost invincible and use it to their advantage when hunting. That's why Old Tom would use this technique every year when he and the pod would return during the migration season from late May until early September. Old Tom would arrive with his pod of between 20 and 30 other killer whales, and they would hunt seals and dolphins while waiting for the giant baleen whales to approach during migration. The whalers recognized Old Tom by the shape of his fin. They gave names to almost all of the members of the pod. For example, one was called Humpy, another Typee, there was also Sharky, and our personal favorite, Big Jack. But enough about the names of these whales, let's talk about the hunting strategies. As we were saying, the pod of the orcas would split into 3 parts. This would make it easy to capture a big prey like a baleen whale, which is between 45 and 100 feet. Once they had their eye on the whale, the first and the largest group would go out into the open sea, and it would make sure that the baleen whale couldn't escape into the open. The second group would go to the bottom, making sure that the whale couldn't get away by diving deep. and the third and final group would be the one doing the chasing. When they started attacking, their attacks consisted of biting the lips and the fins of the whale, while some even tried to jump on top of the whale's blowhole in an attempt to drown the whale. After the whale was trapped in the bay, it was time for Old Tom to come to the shore and perform a few flow tails. What's that? Well, Old Tom would get near the surface of the water and slap its tail on top of the water. After some of the waiters from the Davidson family saw this, locals could hear someone yelling "Rusho" at the top of their lungs. The entire whaling crew would board the green boats and get out into the open sea. Speaking of the Davidson family, we should tell you why Old Tom liked them, but first, let's talk about the family's backstory. You see, the Davidsons were a family which began with Scottish immigrant Alexander Davidson. After coming to Australia, he started his shore-based whaling company back in 1857 along with his son John. Their whaling station was one of the first ever built on KIAH Inlet, and it was the longest-running whaling station of its kind. Interestingly enough, this whaling company didn't invest in new equipment. They had the oldest rowboats and the least powerful harpoons they could get, whereas some of their competitors had powerful pistol harpoons coupled with motorized boats. Yet their company, as we've said, was the longest running whaling company in the region. How come? Well, that's what happens when you pair up with Mother Nature. The Davidson family didn't go out hunting for whales, they let the Orcas hunt the whales. And after Old Tom tail flopped on the shore, they would give him one end of the harpoon, and with breakneck speed, they would be dragged in the middle of the ocean. There they could hunt all of the baleen whales they wanted. Some years they would catch as many as 40 baleen whales in a season. Now, as we've said, there was a special reason as to why the Orcas loved the Davidson family. These people employed indigenous Australian men who followed the law of tongue. They liked working for the Davidson family because they didn't discriminate against them because they looked different. This is why it's been stated that 3 generations of Davidsons got to hunt with Old Tom before his lifeless body was found on the shore. Speaking of Old Tom, the entire village just assumed Old Tom was a male. Back then, they had no way of knowing if the whale was a male or a female, so we still don't know the gender of this unforgettable orca. Might as well have been a powerful female. Another controversial fact is Old Tom's age. The Davidsons said that he was 90 years old, but when they restored the whale's body and placed it in a museum, scientists examined one of the teeth and they found that it only had 35 layers, indicating that the whale was only 35 years old. However, this method of determining the age of the animal is considered false nowadays, so for this video, and because we like Old Tom, let's assume that the Davidsons were telling the truth. As for the death of Old Tom, his body was found dead on September 17, 1930 in the southern part of Twofold Bay. The exact cause of his death is unknown, but we do know that Old Tom probably died of starvation because upon examining his bones, they found out that his teeth were worn down. This is a common reason for death among orcas. However, some rumors say that a shipmate for the Davidson family, John Logan, fought Old Tom for the carcass of the whale and damaged its teeth in the fight, resulting in the worn-out teeth and the death of this majestic creature. This is Koala with quality content. See you soon. YouTube thinks that you should watch this video next.